Hi everyone, my name is Theodoros and I would like to welcome you to today's online training provided by Smartbox and MK Prosopsis in collaboration with Agencia Support ACTU. While we're waiting for people to join, I'd like to let everyone know that today's webinar will be recorded and later on will be uploaded on the Agencia Support YouTube channel. Your microphones have been muted. And I kindly ask you to stay muted throughout the webinar. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like to share with us, feel free to do so. There is a Q&A box located, I think, at the top of your screen. If anyone would like a certificate of attendance, kindly let us know by sending an email on actu.support@gov.mt. I will send the email in the chat box. Our presenters today will be Shaun McCormack, Country Manager from Smartbox, followed by Daisy Clay, a Speech and Language Pathologist and Head of Content at Smartbox, and Theodoros Kyprianidis, an Assistive Technology Professional and Service Provider from MK Prosopsis. I think we can pass the floor on to Shaun.
Okay. You muted. Mute yours. Yes. Okay. You can see me?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Go on the slide.
Good morning, bonjour, everybody. Nice to be in Malta. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, so I thought we'd start by doing some introductions. My name is Shaun McCormack. I'm the country manager for Smartbox. I actually live in Ireland. I used to live in the UK, obviously, for a long time. You'll know by my accent. And we also have our Head of Content and Speech and Language Therapist Daisy Clay, who's going to be helping me with the presentation. These presentations are particularly virtually can be quite tricky to know exactly who is attending. So I thought I'd start by giving a basic introduction to the company, Smartbox, where we are, who we are, where we've come from, and just some background information. So apologies if some of you have already heard this information, but sometimes it's good that everybody is on the same page. So as a company, we help children and adults with complex needs to have a voice and fully participate in society. This is the reason that we exist. We do this by creating technology that supports their communication and independence. So our primary focus is communication, but also a key part of that is independence. So if somebody has speech but requires perhaps access to a computer, these are all things that we can offer as well. So as a broad term, apologies before I say carry on. I should have said if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll try and get to as many as possible towards the end. So we create AAC solutions. So you may have heard this term before. Many people also know what it stands for, but if you didn't know, augmentative and alternative communication is what we refer to when we talk about an AAC device, and that refers to anything that replaces speech. So anything that is designed to replace completely or assist with speech that individuals have. A little bit about us as a company. We call ourselves global these days. We're a big company now. We have a team of over 90 people. Just for reference, 8.5 years, and I was the 25th person in Smartbox. So in 8 years, we've grown quite a lot. So we have offices in the UK, obviously, the head office. We have an office in the States and the office that I run in Ireland. you'll see there's a bit of a split there. You know, there's 74 of us in the UK and Ireland, and only 12 at the moment in the US, but that is a massively growing market. It's really expanded in the recent months. Okay. The real reason that a lot of people are attending is because they want to understand a little bit about our products and what it is that we are able to really, and just help you understand fully what it is that we're able to provide. So usually when people think of Smartbox, if they've heard of Smartbox, it's the grids that they are most familiar with, so the grid software itself. But we have these 5 key areas. Dedicated hardware, what we mean by that is devices that are built from the ground up to be communication devices, AAC devices. So every element of it is designed in a way to allow somebody the ability to communicate. Alternative access. Many people, when they think of these devices, think of amazing technologies like eye gaze and these sorts of things, but it's not the only thing we do, and eye gaze isn't appropriate for everybody. So we have lots of alternatives for switches, head mice, key guards for allowing direct access. There's the list goes on and on and on. And part of my role in particular in my area is to help individuals, therapists, anyone that wants to access this type of device, which one is the best one for them. We also provide really specialist content that could be anything from symbol-based communication or text-based communication, all the way through to accessing social media, controlling the environment that's around you. The list again is very long. One of the most important parts of what we're able to provide, and what I'm very proud of working for Smartbox, is the level of training and support that we're able to offer. We very often hear that our support is industry leading. There is almost as many people in the office doing support as there is out on the road, visiting individuals. And I like to mention that because it gives you an idea about how important it is to us that there's as many people in the support team as that. Okay. So as I mentioned, Grid is what we are known for. It's one of the most popular softwares that we produce. They're all built on, all of our softwares are built on a Grid platform, but we have 2 versions of the Grid. It is available in over 30 languages. Unfortunately, at the moment, Maltese is not one of them, but it is something that we're closely considering. And watch this space is all I can say. On that. As I mentioned, there's 2 variations of the software. So we have Grid 3, which is a Windows-based. So it's on the Windows platform. That will allow users to do symbol AAC, text AAC. We have some interactive learning areas to that. The accessible apps that I mentioned a little earlier for social media, Disney Plus, Spotify, these sorts of things, YouTube, WhatsApp, it's a big one. Environment control, so being able to operate things independently around you, whether that's a television, a smart TV, lights, lamps, these sorts of things. And also full computer control. So if somebody is working at that level, they're able to control the desktop as well. Grid for iPad is the other offering. By nature of the platform, there are some limitations to what we're able to do with the Grid compared to a Windows device. But for the most part, symbol and text AAC is no problem. And also the interactive learning element as well. One of the things that is really important to note is that it is possible to link the systems together so that resources can be shared between the 2. So if you are supporting children in a learning environment and you want to be able to share resources between the different versions of the Grid, it's possible to do that. It's very easy to do that. and it makes it more harmonious in that environment. Okay. So we'll talk in a bit more depth about the grid and the offerings that we have. Daisy will cover much more of that in terms of the actual content itself. But my role in this is to talk about what's new and what our products actually are. Recently, in the last couple of months, we have released the 2 new devices. So we have the Gridpad 10S. I'll explain a bit more about the Gridpad range shortly, but this is our new handheld offering. You'll find that our devices, the number relates to the size of the screen. So 10S is 10-inch screen. We also have just launched the Lumin-i eye gaze camera, which is a brand new camera to the market. Nobody else offers this camera, and it's really exciting for us to have our own offering in this space. I'll start by explaining a little bit about the Gridpad 10S. So the Gridpad 10S, as I said, is a 10-inch device. Unfortunately, it's having to see it on renders. It's not the same as seeing it in real life, but it's the best that we have. So you'll see a couple of things from these first lot of renders. The flexibility of position. So you'll see that it can be laid down on a table. You can see that it has an inbuilt stand as well, and it also has the ability to be mounted as well. So the mount plate is in the bottom right hand corner. You can see the mount plate screwed to the back of the device. This is a really powerful device. It has an i5 processor. For those of you who are concerned with these things, it's a very high spec computer for such a small device, because we understand that communication and having fast communication is a really important element. Again, for the computer people, it's 8 gig of RAM, and it has a solid state hard drive with 256 gig of space, and a 7-hour battery life. We are very honest about our battery lives. One of the things I would say is that when we put a number in terms of our battery life, we mean that it will do what it says. We spend a lot of time testing and trying to give real life examples of how, or understand how devices are used. So 7 hours is the actual battery life of the device. Being a communication device or a speech generating device, amplification is really important. So it is engineered for speech. It has specialist speakers with full range audio. You'll also note from the renderings, I'll show you this one again, the buttons on the side of the device for power, for volume, we've made those as big and as easy to access as possible. We want to encourage users to have more control over their devices. So you'll see also that there is a really large, robust charging port as well. So you're not going to have to worry about cables breaking or these sorts of things that sometimes happen. The display is really important as well. It's a 10-inch HD screen. It's got a toughened glass with an anti-glare coating. And one of the things that has become even more important these days, particularly with COVID and all of these sorts of things, has been antimicrobial. So what we mean by that is that there is a special coating on the screen and on the device which doesn't allow bacteria to grow. So if you are using this in a in an acute setting or a setting where it's important to be able to keep things clean, you don't have to worry about that so much. You can wipe it if you want to with antibacterial wipes, but it has a coating on it, which means that bacteria cannot grow. 650 nits brightness. What that means, if anybody has ever seen a Kindle, the paper white Kindle for reading books, which means you can read it in any light, effectively it's a very similar thing. It means that if it's very sunny outside, which thank goodness it is today in Malta, not so much over the weekend, then it should be readable. And just for reference there, you can see that the iPad is around 500 nits. So nits is just a measurement of brightness, basically. One of the things that we have worked very hard on as well is the idea of being able to give users as much possibility for face-to-face interaction as possible. And one of the ways that we've done that is by adding second screens to our devices. What this is designed to do is designed to keep the communication with the user face-to-face rather than people leaning around the side of the screen to try and read what's on the screen. It's trying to promote that idea of face-to-face communication. It also has user-controlled settings, which means that a user can turn it on and off if they want to. It's not always going to be appropriate to have things shown on the second screen. And the other thing that we're able to do, you'll see there that this second screen is symbolized, but you can turn that on and off, and a user can decide whether they want their symbols to be shown or not. So even if they're using a symbol grid, the symbols don't have to be shown on the second screen. With a device like this, which is primarily a direct access device, it's important that things like IP ratings and drop testings are taken into consideration. It is IP rated. IP stands for ingress protection. That means that the covers on the back of the device, for example, it has dust covers, there's no small surfaces for moisture or dirt to get into. It is drop tested as well, designed for easy repair. It's around 1.4 kilos, which is fine with the way that these devices are carried. As I mentioned, it has the antimicrobial coating, and you can choose to have this tough case or not. So that the tough cases you can see in this image is included. Sorry, the tough case is included in this image here. When we talk about environment control, the 10S has Giwa infrared environment control. Giwa is a Swedish brand. It's been around for a long time, very reliable and designed for ease of use. It also, the infrared that it transmits is very strong, which is obviously a benefit when you're trying to use these devices. You'll see that it is also designed for alternative access. So as well as touch, it also has 2 switch ports in it. So if you are a switch user, you can also plug USB devices into it, such as head mice, joysticks, these sorts of things. And Smile Mouse is another potential. I won't focus on that just now. The switch ports are reinforced. It also has Bluetooth connectivity, obviously. Key guards are available. The remote power button is a really interesting one. The remote power button, what this allows you to do is by pressing the blue button on the remote there is turn the device on. This also has 2 switch inputs in it as well, so we can use this as a wireless transmitter for the switch. So if somebody is using switch and they are in a wheelchair, for example, the last thing you want to have to do is disconnect lots of wires to take them in and help them in and out of the chair. The wireless switch transmitter is available with the device as well. Okay. Moving on from the 10S, we have recently launched our very own eye gaze camera called Lumin-i. It's designed for the Gridpad range of devices. It only comes as an enclosure for the Gridpads at the moment. There is no standalone option, unfortunately. It was developed with a company called Smartbox Technology, who are leaders in eye tracking for at the aerospace and automotive industry. So they work with NASA, they work with Audi, Harvard University and Georgia Tech. I think another couple of car brands as well vehicle brands that they work with as well. But they have a good pedigree in this environment. Without sort of boring you too much with some of the technical stuff, I thought it was just easier just to pick 3 things that really sort of the key points about this device. One of the most important things for an eye gaze camera to be effective is the ability for it to recover. And what we mean by that is when somebody looks away from the screen and comes back to it, particularly if we're working with a user perhaps with cerebral palsy who struggles to maintain their head position sometimes, what we want the camera to be able to do is to pick their eyes back up as quickly as possible. And the recovery rate of the device is very fast, 17 milliseconds. So almost as fast as you can blink, the device is designed to pick you back up. It also copes with lots of head movement. The track box is large, so 30 by 30 by 65 centimeters. So it gives you a good range of allowable movement within that track box. And like it says there, so even if they have involuntary head movement, or you change your position, or you tilt your head, obviously, if you are using one of these devices and you sit up nice and straight, after 1, maybe 2 hours, you're going to be sort of naturally going to be tiring a little bit. The good thing is that the track box is large and it should cope with that movement well. It also is designed to work in any lighting conditions, so we are confident that it will provide good outdoor tracking and give you access to your communication regardless of the environment in which you find yourself in. Okay. Again, if anybody has any questions on the Gridpad, on anything that we talk about today, please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we will try to get to them at the end of the call. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about the devices, the 10S. You may be or may not be familiar with the other Gridpad range of devices. So the 12 and the 15, as I mentioned, this would be a 12-inch screen and a 15-inch screen. At this point, I'm going to switch over and hopefully we're going to watch a short video on from one of our directors explaining the range itself. Okay. Cool.
Hi, I'm Hannah, and I'm going to talk you through our Gridpad range of communication aids. There are 3 sizes of Gridpad to choose from, including the 15, 12, and the 10. They are all dedicated devices that have been designed specifically for AAC. The 12 and 15-inch devices can be used with any type of alternative access, including touch, switch, head pointer, and eye gaze. For eye gaze users, we have this purpose-built enclosure which fits neatly under the screen to transform your Gridpad into an eye gaze device. Our 10-inch device is designed primarily for touch and switch users, and it is our most versatile Gridpad in terms of positioning. You can take it with you using the shoulder strap. You can mount it to your wheelchair using the plate here on the back. You can lay it flat on a desk, or you can use the adjustable stand to position it upright. All of our Gridpads are built with a powerful i5 Intel processor and 8 GB of RAM, so you can make full use of all the features in Grid. So that's an overview of the range. Now I'm going to run through some of the user feedback that has helped us design these devices specifically to meet the needs of AAC users. And the most important thing, not surprisingly, is having your voice all day long, so we included large integrated batteries. We have also included loud built-in speakers that are designed for voice reproduction, so you can be heard clearly even in noisy environments. The second screen also helps to get your message across by displaying it on the rear of the device. We also heard from lots of you that you wanted to be able to turn on your device yourself. All our Gridpad devices come with a remote power button, allowing you to independently turn on your device using the button here or by connecting a switch. We got lots of feedback that ports can be difficult to identify and getting the wrong port can cause damage to the device. So we added optional port labels that make things clearer, and we've also reinforced all of the ports to make them super tough. Keeping your device clean is also important, especially in clinical settings. So we have embedded antimicrobial technology within the screen and the case to help keep your device cleaner for longer. Thank you for watching, and you can find out more about our Gridpad range on our website.
Okay. Brilliant. It was much easier just to play a short video than it was to try and hold these devices up to the camera so that you can see them. So hopefully that's helped to help you visualize the devices a little better. I mentioned earlier, one of the most important things about the service that we offer is the ability to work with alternative access methods. And like I said, most people's first thought on that is usually eye gaze, but we do offer a range of different alternative access methods as well, be it switch access or pointer access or touch as well. Like, and sometimes for a user, having a key guard or an overlay on the device is their preference. They would rather continue to use a touchscreen with that little bit of assistance rather than using one of the more involved access methods like switch or eye gaze. Okay. Talking about the Grid itself, we talk about specialist content. It's packed full of resources for all ages and abilities, so there is no age range on the Grid. It can be, we say, wonderfully simple or very complicated. It just depends on the type of user that you're working with. We also have a deep knowledge within the team, particularly the support team and the team that's on the road, my team. It's always comforting to know that you can pick up the phone or go onto the website and speak to somebody that can assist you with your queries and get you back up and running if there is any issues that arise. Okay. One of the things that I wanted to talk through was just to kind of set the scene a little bit for what Daisy is going to talk about shortly, was the idea of grid sets. Sometimes we use language talking about our products and think that everybody knows what we mean just because we say them all the time. I just wanted to be clear about what we mean when we talk about a grid set. So grid sets are usually pre-made resources that are within the Grid software itself. So that's sort of either on the iPad or on the Windows version, Grid 3, that enable you to communicate and interact with the world around you using any access method. Sometimes these grid sets are text and sometimes they're symbol based. Sometimes they're purely for accessing things like Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, WhatsApp, these sorts of things. Sometimes they're to control the full computer. So if you want to be able to control your desktop, open Microsoft Word, these sorts of things, that's possible as well. And sometimes the grid sets are, like we've mentioned a couple of times, to be able to control the environment that's around you. That again, environment control sometimes is seen as like mainly for adult for the adults that want to use it. I would say, like, we've done some really nice sessions, particularly recently, with children working in sensory rooms, using environment control to turn on things like bubble tubes or lights and that sort of stuff. And it's still using that environment control feature, but it's just in a slightly different way. I mentioned some of the resources are symbol based. They're available in different symbol libraries as well. So primarily our resources are produced in PCS, so similar symbols, or the widget symbols is the other library that we use. Some of our resources are available in symbol sticks as well. These are some of the resources that Daisy will talk you through very shortly. So VocoChat is a new resource. SuperCore has been around for a little while, and an example there of Pod, if you've ever heard of Pod, it's another symbol-based resource that we have in the Grid. Excuse me. And we also have a range of text-based resources as well. So just a simple text-to-speech keyboard with some pre-stored messages with Text Talker, or a more comprehensive all-in-one type solution called Fast Talker that has access to, you can see there, social media, answering the phone, stored messages, message banking as well. Message banking is in both Text Talker and Fast Talker. And then AlphaCore. AlphaCore is a grid set that was produced in partnership with an American speech and language pathologist. But yeah, I don't think we cover that one today, but if anybody does want to see that, I'm happy to give sort of information subsequent to the call. One of the key areas that we've worked a lot on recently, and we've changed the way that we do these things, is accessible apps. Accessible apps, what we refer to, could be something like giving somebody the ability to access their email, text messaging, social media, and regardless of access method, really. So it doesn't matter whether you're using direct access, touchscreen, switch access, eye gaze, these sorts of things. It primarily allows, well, one of the great things about it is it allows users to practice their access method. So to improve their to improve their communication, they can do things like access Instagram or YouTube, these things. If they're practicing their access method, it's obviously going to hopefully benefit their communication as well. If you want to know a full list, I can send a list on of all the accessible apps that we have available, as I'm not sure that Daisy has that in her talk, but yeah, if anybody wants any further information, please feel free to reach out. I think I've covered everything there. Brilliant. Okay, I think I've covered everything that I want to talk about, so I'll now hand you over to Daisy Clay, and she'll take you through the symbol vocabularies in Grid 3. Thank you.
Wonderful, thanks, Shaun. Yeah, so Shaun is going to be glamorously assisting and going through my slides here. So I think my first slide is an introduction slide. You can just move on to the next one. And I've got animations on all my points, so you have to. So yeah, I'm Daisy Clay. I'm the head of the content development team at Smartbox, and that's a more recent photo. The one that Shaun used earlier on was me when I was quite a lot younger. I think I look a bit different now. But anyway, I'm a speech and language therapist, and one of quite a few speech and language therapists here at Smartbox now. So that was my background, and I worked in AAC. Then later trained as a speech and language therapist, worked in lots of different settings, and then came to Smartbox. So as Shaun's already said, worked for Smartbox, who developed Grid 3 and Grid for iPad. And I'm going to be talking about SuperCore, which is a vocabulary that I developed, and VocoChat, which is our latest symbol vocabulary, which I co-developed. So, oh, we've got someone else sharing. Hi, Theo. So Shaun's just going to share. So I'm just going to quickly recap what Grid is. So as Shaun was saying, it's an AAC platform and it's designed for Windows and iOS. And the beauty of this is that you can use either of the bits of content I'm going to tell you about, either SuperCore or VocoChat, in Grid 3 on Windows or on iPads, or if you're working with several children or several adults, they can be using an iPad or they can be using Gridpad, and the content, the grid sets will look exactly the same. So you're not having to learn different vocabularies for different systems. So it's designed for communication, and this goes all the way from symbols through to literacy. So it's just one piece of software, rather than having one app for symbol communication, one for text. It's all part of one platform. So once you know how to use Grid, you can just choose the content that you need. And if you've got someone who starts out using symbols, hopefully they're going to progress to start learning some literacy, and they might end up fully just using our text-based AAC. It's also designed for independence. So as Shaun's talked about, we've got accessible apps, computer control and environment control, which I won't talk much about, but just to highlight that those are there as well. Designed for all forms of access. So again, if you're working with someone who's using eye gaze and you're working with someone who's using a touch screen, you can use exactly the same content. So our content, as well as the software, is designed for all forms of access. We really hope that it's intuitive and easy to program. We get lots of feedback from people that it is, which is really reassuring, because AAC is complicated enough as it is, and there's lots to learn, as I'm sure you all know. So we want to make our software as simple as possible, but it's not oversimplified. So there's lots that you can do with it, and there's lots of thought that goes into how things are designed. But hopefully, when you're looking at it as a professional or parent, it doesn't feel overwhelming. We allow things like remote editing and syncing between Windows and iPad. So you can be a therapist or a parent using Grid 3 on your laptop, and you can actually edit someone else's device or their iPad, which is a really powerful feature. And I'm sure, as Shaun might mention or might have already mentioned, we do free demos of Grid. You can download them. You can get a 60-day free trial of Grid 3 if you want to have a look at anything in more detail. And we also offer SLT assessment copies. If you are someone that's going to be seeing lots of people and you want a copy of Grid, just let us know. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about SuperCore and VocoChat, which are our two flagship symbol vocabularies. So they're quite different. I'm going to be talking about the differences and giving you a demo of both of them today. Both developed for symbol communication, and both of them have been designed for the AAC learners, but also their communication partners. So when I was designing both of them, rather than just thinking about the user themselves, I spent a lot of time thinking about the people who are supporting that user, because really they need to find it intuitive and they need to understand the vocabulary in order to be able to demonstrate that. and obviously we know that modelling is really, really important. You've got to be able to feel confident and feel happy to show someone how to use a vocabulary. So we really tried to make it easy for the communication partners as well as the AAC learners. So both of these are available in widget and PCS, and as Shaun mentioned, yeah, we've got lots of symbol sets available, so we'll be showing you the PCS ones today. Both of these are available in a range of other languages. Unfortunately, Maltese isn't one of them at the moment, but we are working our way through lots of languages at quite a pace, so yeah, you never know. And both of these vocabularies can be used with any access method. And both of them can be used on Windows and iOS. Okay, so I've got a summary table on the next slide just to show you sort of highlight some of the differences. They are very different vocabularies, which you'll see once we go into Grid and I demo them, but I think it's useful to just quickly sort of see this overview. So in terms of sizes, SuperCore comes in 50 and 30, and then we also have something called learning grids, which are much simpler versions, designed as a bit of a starting point. So they're not a robust vocabulary, but they're something you can start with, and those come in 12 and 20 cell. And then we've got VocoChat, which itself is a robust vocabulary, so everything you need to communicate about absolutely sort of all-day communication, and that is just 12 cells. So it's a really low cell count for a robust vocabulary compared to SuperCore, which has got a lot more cells, and you'll see when we look at those in Grid. Both of them are available for any age range. So in both Grid sets, when you open them, you'll be given a choice between either a child vocabulary or a teen and adult vocabulary. So we felt like this was really important because we offer these vocabularies for anyone that needs it, and we know that there's going to be a huge range of needs, but often we might have someone who's younger starting to use one of these vocabularies, and we don't want them to get to a certain age and then have to start learning something else completely different. Actually, what would be ideal is if they can start at whatever age using the right vocabulary for them, and if they get to a point where they need access to more adult vocabulary, then they can just have that added into what they're using rather than having to learn something else. So looking at the number of words, you can see single word vocabulary, there's over 2,250 single words, so quite a lot, compared with over 1,500 in VocoChat. So more single words in SuperCore. But then when we look at the pre-stored phrases, so the whole phrase method of communicating by building up using phrases, you can see that there are more in VocoChat. So we'll have a look at that in a second. In terms of how language is organised, that's really different between these two as well. So SuperCore uses a core vocabulary approach. So using all of those core words that we use throughout the day to talk about absolutely anything, all of those little words that are really high frequency, which we call core words. That's how SuperCore is based. And then VocoChat is based on something called pragmatics, which sometimes that word gets used a lot and sometimes people are a bit sort of intimidated by it. I don't really know what that means, but it just means thinking about how we use language rather than thinking about exactly the specific words that someone is using to build up their message. We're just focusing on the reason for that communication. So why are they actually building up a message? So we're not so worried about those specific words. And pragmatics also thinks about the social use of language. So how someone uses language to talk with other people and interact. And then, so the next point, schematic, again, that's a word that gets used sometimes, it's a bit jargony, but all that means is that language is really focused on activities. So we have lots of activity grids in both vocabularies. And the idea of this is that rather than just giving someone all the words or all the phrases, you're actually giving them support to use them in a meaningful situation. So you're giving them words arranged according to the activity, which can be really helpful, not just for the user, but also the communication partner. So that's one of the key things that these vocabulary systems have been designed around, to make it much easier for the communication partner to say, oh, okay, this is the activity. and here's all the language that I need around it right there, without having to use lots and lots of navigation. And then finally, thinking about grammar support, in SuperCore, we have got smart grammar, which again we'll demonstrate. So that just means automatic grammar. As you're building up your message, the grammar is correcting itself. And then we've also got a magic wand, which you can go in and use to manually change the grammar. Whereas in VocoChat, it's a really different approach, and we're not so worried about grammar because we're thinking about pragmatics. We're thinking much more about the reason for communication. We're not really focusing on all of the individual words and making the grammar absolutely perfect, because the focus is on meaning and not the grammar. So hopefully that's giving you a bit of a flavour of the two vocabularies and how they're different and how they're similar. And if Shaun can open up Grid, we can have a look at both of those in a bit more detail. So if we start in SuperCore 50, and again, as just to kind of remind you, if you've got any questions, please do pop them in the chat, and we can have a look at those later. So SuperCore 50, as you'll see, quite a lot of cells on the screen. But what you've got access to here, although there is a lot here, once you start learning it, there's actually quite a lot of, we've really thought about the design to make it really easy once you get started. So this block of words on the left hand side, so we've got the word who all the way along to then, down to not and people. So that square of words there, that's our core vocabulary, and it's actually our consistent core vocabulary because it stays the same. So once you start to learn to use those words, you're going to be able to use them in lots and lots of different situations. If we just have a look at a couple of short phrases that you could say, so maybe I want this.
Want this.
Or maybe I like it.
Like.
It's on our friend, there we go. So that's just a couple of examples of how we can use core words, and I could say those phrases in any situation. It's not specific to a particular activity. So this block of core words was designed based on lots and lots of research. I read basically all of the research into core vocabulary to come up with a really useful list of words to build this core vocabulary. So the research looked at children, it looked at adults, it looked at people who used AAC, people who speak, it looked at early written language, and so when children are learning to write, what words do they write first? And it looked at also children and adults with disabilities and without disabilities. So it's really, really comprehensive look at all of these different words to build up this consistent core. But there's also an emphasis on some words that will be more useful for someone who's an AAC user. So words like help, that might not actually be a word that's really, really high frequency. But if you're someone that needs help or might need more help, having it there, really, really important. And also words like now and then, those time words, which actually can be really important to get something to happen and can be really motivating when you're first starting to use communication. So this block of core words, lots and lots of thoughts gone into it and why they're arranged the way that they are. But what we also get with the core words is some useful next words. So the purple cells will actually change as you start to select any of the other core words. So if I select I, then you can see that you get words across the top. So I can really, so you can see that the word really has appeared there. Or even just starting with a really short sentence. So if you clear that and select the word go, Shaun.
Go.
Go home, go inside, go outside, go away. So those are all words that appear elsewhere in SuperCore. But when someone's first starting out, you might want to just focus on staying in one place and not having to do lots of navigation and going backwards and forwards between different grids. So these useful next words can be a really nice way of just starting to build up sentences and make them that little bit longer. So you could have a sentence like I used earlier. I really like it, instead of just I like it, using those useful next words. And there's lots of repetition as well, so you don't get 5 new words for every one of the other words. There's also lots of repetition, so if you select you get the same words as you do when you select I. Anyway, that's something to play around with, but just to let you know, those useful next words are there, and they're not predictions, because word predictions are actually really unpredictable, because the words will move around. You won't know which words are going to be predicted in what order, and when you're starting out using AAC, you want things to be as consistent and predictable as possible, so you can really build up those motor patterns, so you know exactly where you're going to be pressing on the screen if you want to build up a sentence like I really like it. So that's my motor pattern for that. Similarly, if you're using eye gaze, you want to know exactly where those words are going to be. So we've seen the core vocabulary, and now I want to show you sort of the essence of SuperCore, the thing that is, you know, really, really central to it and has made it so successful. And that is the daily and the play activity grids. So if we go into daily, one of the questions that, as I say, I've worked in AAC for a long time, and one of the questions that I've heard time and time again is from people saying, how do I get started? Okay, what do I do first? Or I've got the device, I've got a trial, I've got a loan, or even I've had a system funded, but how do I actually get started? And how do I get from someone who's not using AAC to someone who is using AAC all day, every day, in lots of activities? And that's where the activity grids come in, because it's a really nice way to say, well, these are activities that are going to happen anyway, or these are activities that might be really motivating. So don't worry about trying to think up lots of ways to fit your AAC into your day and come up with new activities. Just think about what you're already doing and where those opportunities for communication are. So if we go to something like dressing, then you can see here I've got a set of words which are all specific to the activity of getting dressed, which is going to happen every day. And then I've got my consistent core on the left hand side. So I've gone to my activity and those core words haven't changed. So I could say something like, I like my coat. So I could use words on the left hand side from that consistent core that I've started to get familiar with, and then I can pop in one of those activity specific words. Or I might do it the other way around and clear off that sentence and just say jumper off and start using words in that activity. And that's the same, either the user could be doing that or the person who's modelling could be doing that. And you can see we've got lots and lots of different activities. So let's jump home and have a look at the play activities.
Play.
So let's choose something like bubbles. So again, that consistent core has stayed exactly the same. So I could say, I really like bubbles if I've started learning how to use those core words.
Really? Like bubbles.
Or again, I can clear that off and I can just be using words from that activity, those dynamic columns on the right hand side. So I can just be commenting. I could say big bubbles or bubbles up or catch bubbles. I mean, there's infinite possibilities of how I can use all of these words.
Yeah.
But that's how it's really designed for the user and the communication partner, because yes, you've got lots of core words there, but once you learn them, they stay the same, they're consistent, they don't move, and then you can use them in all of those different activities. And there are dozens of activities, and there's even more activities if you choose the teenage and adult version of this as well, ones that are more suitable for someone who's older. So we won't go into it now because we'll run out of time, but hopefully that's giving you a nice flavour of the activities. Just a couple of other things to say on SuperCore before we look back at VocoChat is to say about the colour coding. So you'll notice that that consistent core block has got different sections and uses different colours, and this is the Fitzgerald colour key, which is commonly used across lots of AAC vocabulary, so really useful for supporting early sentence building using different types of word. And then we've also got consistent vocabulary locations. So if a word isn't in a particular location, so we're in the bubbles activity now, and you can see words up, down, and you can see again. If I jump back and go into a different activity, so let's choose balloons, then also I've got those words in exactly the same place. So again, it's really making it much more predictable and consistent for someone who is trying to build up motor patterns, and just makes it so that someone knows where those words are going to be if they're in a different activity that they've not been in before. It builds on any previous learning that they've already done. And we've got all of the usual vocabulary you'd expect to find. So if we jump home and just have a quick look in topics, then you can, if we go into something like vehicles, then you can see there are, well, hundreds, as we saw earlier, even thousands of single words that you can dip in and use. But we know that the majority of message building is going to be using all of those core words that you get access to from the home grid. But I'm going to test Shaun now. So if we jump back home, let's say I want to play with.
Want to.
So there we go. You see that there was that useful next word with my. And let's jump back. And we're back on that grid we were just on. And then you can choose whatever you would like to play with, Shaun, your fire engine or any of the vehicles. So there we go. And if we wanted to add in another core word, we can just use jump back. Jump home. And then we've got access to all of those other words. So maybe I might want to carry on my sentence with, and then I am going to, I won't carry it on because we're running out of time, but you can see how you can jump between the core words and those topic words. And just a final point on SuperCore is that there is also a focus on literacy. So I mentioned earlier about Grid being something that can support someone who's using symbols and through to using text AAC. So we've got things like some of these words don't have a symbol, and that's where the symbols are really not very meaningful. So they might just be a triangle or something that's not that helpful. And what would be really helpful for someone developing literacy is to start seeing that whole word and recognising the word itself. And then we've also got things like a spelling area. So we've got keyboard that people can use to start exploring letters and sounds. Here we are. Okay. So if we just jump into Grid Explorer, quickly just want to show you SuperCore 30. So you can see, hopefully already looks quite familiar. Some of those words are exactly the same, but this is for someone who can't cope with as many cells that there are in SuperCore 50. So you've got much lower cell count, only 30 instead of 50, but you've still got all of the same sort of ideas behind it. So you've got a consistent core on the left-hand side, that's not going to change. So you can still say something like, I like it, and you can build up some sentences. And any of those core words that you did have access to are only one click away in those jumps at the bottom. But let's have a quick look at one of those activity grids. So daily, and we'll go into dressing because we had a look at that before. And again, you've got consistent core on the left-hand side, activity words on the right. So you could say, I want jumper off.
I want jumper off.
But the key thing to say about SuperCore 30 is it gives you access to exactly the same words that you have with SuperCore 50, because just because your access is more complex doesn't mean that you're not going to have the same, then you're not going to need the same access to language and language development. So you get all of the same words and phrases in SuperCore 30, just laid out with fewer cells on each grid. So there is a bit more navigation. You do need to do a few more clicks to get to some of the words, but all of the words are there. And then if we jump back into Grid Explorer, have a quick look at the learning grids. So I mentioned that at the beginning, we've got these 12 and 20 cell SuperCore learning grids. And the idea of these is that they take out the vocabulary that was in those right-hand two columns and put it alongside a really, really simplified core, consistent core. So let's have a look at the 20 cell play bubbles. So the vocabulary that was in the right hand 2 columns is here in the right hand 3, and then we've got a consistent core on the left hand side. So the idea of this is, if you think about cause and effect communication, so if you were doing a bubbles activity, you've got a set of words here that the communication partner or the AAC learner can select, and you can select any of these words, and they're going to be pretty meaningful and useful in that activity. So even if someone is just exploring, don't necessarily understand what all of these symbols mean, particularly some of the more abstract ones, you can still start to get a bit of a cause and effect. So someone might recognise bubbles and select that one, and then it's really easy for the communication partner to start modelling. Oh, you've said bubbles. Yeah, should we blow bubbles? Should we blow bubbles again? Bubbles up. So you've just got the vocabulary for that activity, and you can print these off. You can have these as a low-tech version, and you don't have to worry about any of that navigation. So it can be really nice for building up confidence. If someone hasn't used AAC before, or maybe they've used something that wasn't right for them, the learning grid's a really nice place to start. Okay, and then, yeah, we've also got simpler 12 cell version. Quickly can just show 12 cell play bubbles. Oh, this is obviously an edited version because there's a couple missing. So here you are seeing some live editing, Shaun demonstrating just how quick and easy it is to hide and reveal symbols if you needed to do that with whoever you were working with. So yeah, so these are the learning grids. But let's jump into Grid Explorer and have a whistle-stop tour of VocoChat. Sorry I'm going so quickly, but there is so much that I want to say to you, but there's loads more information on our website and lots of videos and webinars. So obviously you'll be able to watch this back if you want to as well. So this is VocoChat, very different cell count. So when you think about SuperCore 50 and SuperCore 30 and how much there was to look at, you can imagine that for some users that might be too complicated, or it might be too hard to access that many buttons. So if someone's using eye gaze, maybe their eye gaze isn't that accurate, and they might be making lots of selections that they don't mean to make. Equally, if you've got a switch user, it might be taking them quite a long time to build up a message one word at a time. And then also you might be working with someone who has learning difficulties, and it's going to be really difficult for them to start with something like SuperCore and to learn how to build language that way. So our first aim with VocoChat was to make something that was a lot fewer cells than SuperCore, and just something that was going to make communication a lot quicker. So VocoChat is designed much more focusing on the reasons that we communicate, not building it up one word at a time, because that's not going to be suitable for everyone. So it's a really different approach. The main thing VocoChat is based on is these message pathways. So we've got 6 message pathways making up the left-hand side of the screen, and these are designed to support really quick communication. So if we select something is wrong.
Something is wrong.
With my body.
With my body.
So you can see in 2 selections, I've built up a whole sentence, and I've quickly got to the reason for my communication. So I can then add on more to this. I could say something itches.
Something itches.
I could say foot.
Foot.
And in 4 selections, I have got my message across to someone. I've said something's wrong, it's my body, something itches, and it's my foot. And the grammar isn't perfect, but someone would know exactly what you meant with that message. And that is the focus of VocoChat. It's not about having all of the little words there. It's about getting your message across. And it's about communicating for lots of different reasons as well. So if we jump home and choose something is wrong again.
Something is wrong.
Grid, you get so many different reasons, because obviously there are lots of things that might be wrong. Maybe I need help, or I don't know what's wrong. I just know that something's wrong, but I don't know what it is, or I don't want to. So there's a really big focus in VocoChat on independence and self-advocacy. So someone, even though they can't access lots and lots of cells, they might not have good access. It's really important, obviously, for all AAC users to be able to advocate for themselves and say, I don't want to do that. And just as we saw, if we click on I don't want to, saw with something is wrong with my body, each selection gives you more and more options. So you can add more detail, or you could just stop there. You could say something is wrong, I don't want to. And maybe that's the end of the message. But for someone who is able to give more detail, they can carry on building their message. So maybe I feel bored. Something is wrong, I don't want to, I feel bored. So I've been able to add lots of information by making those extra selections. So let's jump back home and have a look at another message pathway. So let's look at, can I tell you something?
Can I tell you something?
So here we've got lots of different reasons that you might want to be telling someone something. So I might want to tell my news, I might want to tell a joke or tell a story, or I might just want to tell someone something about something I like or something I don't like. So if we click on either of those, things I like or things I don't like, it actually takes you through to a blank grid. Because it's a template for you to add in that information for the user. And there's lots and lots of template grids in VocoChat. So you've got these grids which are just programmed with blank write command. So all you need to do is go into edit mode, choose the cell where you want the word, type the word, go on Shaun, add in something that you like. So you can see that the command is already there on the left hand side. So all Shaun needs to do is type in a word and choose a symbol. There we go, things he likes, alter. And it's that quick to just add in, because obviously it's really important to be able to talk about the things you like and the things you don't like. You're going to want to talk about those more than anything else. So let's jump home and have a look at, can I ask you something?
Can I ask you something?
So we've got a range of single question words. You might just want to say who, or you might want to say something more specific like what are you doing or where are we going? So there's lots of different question words in VocoChat. So we've had a look at 3 message pathways, and there's 3 more if we jump back home. But the idea behind VocoChat is giving people lots and lots of different reasons to communicate, because there can be it can be tempting to focus on asking for things and those, you know, really basic communication functions, but there's so much more to communication than just asking for things. So we want to make sure that with something like VocoChat, we're encouraging all of those different reasons. So telling people information, asking people for information, yeah, saying when there's a problem and helping communicate information about what's wrong. But we have got our I want pathway. So let's have a look at I want.
I want.
So you can ask for things in here. So you could ask for something to eat, something to drink. You could ask for personal care. So like I said before, there's lots of emphasis in VocoChat on independence and being able to have a bit more control. But there's also lots of activity grids. So let's have a look at the play something. I want to play something.
Play something.
I want to play something. So you can see you get access to lots of activity grids. So there is that overlap between VocoChat and SuperCore, because learning to communicate in an activity is going to be really meaningful. So if we go to bubbles, see what that looks like. We've got some really useful words on the left hand side. So lots of them are core words, or they're a phrase that would be really useful in that activity. And then we've got some more activity specific words on the right hand side. And there's loads of activities, and these are different in the adult version compared to the child one as well. But let's jump back home. As I say, it's a whistle-stop tour. About 10 minutes left to cover lots. So let's have a look at the I feel message pathway. which we have already seen because we went to something is wrong, I don't want to, I feel bored. But you might want to just quickly go and say, I feel excited, and jump into that message pathway.
Excited.
So there's lots of overlap between the different message pathways, and there's different ways to get to the same grid depending on the reason for your communication. So that's the focus, and what that means is that there's lots of repetition. So you might come across a grid and be confident already because you've seen that grid before and you've used it in a different context, or you've used that grid to communicate a slightly different meaning, but you've seen it before. So lots and lots of repetition and things like that designed to make it easier to learn VocoChat. So then the last message pathway is I think. It's all about giving your opinion. So you might just, when you're starting out, you might just say something simply like, I like it, or I don't like it, or I'm not sure. But then as you're building up your ability to communicate, you might be able to say something like, I think it is.
It is.
Special.
Special.
Not as many single words as there are in SuperCore, but there's still a lot. So you've still got that flexibility to create novel messages. So I think I like it. It is special. So let's jump back home. The next column, this orange column, is all about quick communication. So we've got the message pathways, but also there's a real focus in VocoChat on just being part of the conversation and just getting involved in what people are talking about. So we've got quick words, and that's lots of words that you might just need quick access to. So you can see toilet, obviously you might need to say that quickly, but we've got yes and no. If the person you're talking to doesn't understand the way that you communicate yes or no, maybe they're not familiar with you, you can quickly get there. And words like more, stop, finish, obviously they're really useful to get to. Let's jump back and have a look at one of my favourite parts of VocoChat is this chat grid here. So this is about helping someone who uses AAC to start a conversation, keep it going, solve any problems and finish a conversation in quite a natural way. So each column represents that different part of a conversation. So we've got conversation starters, things like hi, how are you? We've got option to go to more at the bottom. We've got ways to keep a conversation going. So we know that can be hard for AAC learners to learn how to have that natural way of getting someone to carry on telling you. So tell me more. If we go into more talking, got a few words here so people can say things like, yeah, I know. Those natural sort of fillers that we all use in conversation, giving an AAC user a way to do that. If we jump back. Sorry, jump home, yeah. And then I won't go into the detail because I'm going to run out of time, but we've also got a section for my phrases. So this is mostly blank, but this is where you can really personalise VocoChat and put in some of those phrases that it might be a child and it might be something that other children in their class say all the time. So maybe it's slang, or it might be based on where you live, and it might be something that people say all the time where you live, and you can add those phrases in there. So let's jump home. I'm not going to demo the last column because it's all quite self-explanatory. It's all, you know, people, vocabulary, places and more words, things like vehicles, and that's where you'd get to all of that. As I've said before, there's loads of videos on VocoChat that you can have a look at to find out a bit more information. But I also just want to highlight the My Toolkit area, which is that top left cell. So My Toolkit is just a really powerful place in VocoChat where you've got access to extra tools that you might want for communication. So we've got things in here which are more about your emotions and saying how you feel, or calming yourself down if you need that strategy. But then we've also got communication strategies. So an area called Can I Give You a Clue, which gives you lots more support to help you get your message across. And then if we jump back, Then we've also got an area called My AAC, where you can put in lots of information about that user's communication. Again, really focusing on independence, so they can communicate how they communicate. They can actually own that information and talk about it themselves. So loads in the toolkit, which I won't go into now. But if we pop back into PowerPoint, I can just give a quick summary of what we've seen so far. I appreciate it is a lot of information, but yeah, SuperCore. The key features we saw there, we've got core vocabulary based on lots of research, smart grammar that helps you as you're building up your message, so you don't have to worry about the grammar side of things too much. Useful next words, so that supports you to make your messages longer and longer and build in new words without having to do navigation. Dynamic columns, so you've got the activity words on the right hand side and a consistent core that you get really familiar with and really confident at using, either as the user or the communication partner. Fitzgerald colour coding, which you'll be really familiar with across other vocabularies, and consistent locations, so you can really start to build up your motor pattern and get confident with where those words are going to be and that they're not going to move around. And support for language development, but also literacy development. Compared to VocoChat, where we've got those message pathways and the focus is on really quick communication and quickly getting your message across. And that's designed much more for people with complex access or cognitive difficulties that might make it harder for them to learn or remember or attend to lots of information on the screen. And it's organised by pragmatic, so focusing on why we're communicating, not the specific words, and really focusing on using language in real situations, activities and conversations, and focuses on independence and advocating for yourself, saying what you want and talking about yourself, and focusing on taking part and being involved using those activity grids. So, oh, and then finally, I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but there is lots of language in VocoChat about mental health. So we've got a whole section on mental health where you can say, I'm not okay, and you can talk about what might be wrong. And it's lots of really simplified language around things like anxiety and depression, but not using technical words. So you can find out a bit more about that if you're interested. So both of the vocabularies are designed really with the AAC learner in mind, but also the communication partner, because I appreciate that that is a really hard job when you get started. So we're really trying to make it as easy as possible. And that SuperCore focuses on language development, using a single word by word, core vocabulary approach, compared to VocoChat, which is focusing much more on communication development, and it's based on phrases, and it takes the pragmatic approach. And finally, it's not directly linked to the vocabularies, but I really wanted to mention it to make sure you're aware of it, is our simple AAC framework. So it's not just enough to choose the vocabulary and say, off you go. We know that people need support to know what to do and how to be successful in supporting someone to learn AAC. So both of the vocabularies come with a really comprehensive manual, and the manual has information on how you might want to personalise it. But then we've got a simple AAC framework, which you can use with any vocabulary. So it doesn't have to be one of the Smartbox vocabularies. It might be something you're already using, but that simple AAC framework will talk you through all of the basic strategies. So modelling, keeping it interesting, using things like pause and time to support someone to become successful at AAC. So do have a look. If you just Google simple AAC, then that'll take you to our website, all the links there. And there we all are. Happy, shiny faces. Shaun. Am I handing back to you now, Shaun?
Yeah, we're going to hand over to Theo. Thank you so much, Daisy. That's really helpful.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me, Shaun?
Sorry.
Can you hear me? Yeah, right. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you first for the invitation, from Support Agency. My name is Theodoros Kyprianidis. I'm an assistive technology professional. I represent MK Prosopsis, which mainly deals with assistive technology products and services. Our purpose as a company is AT, assistive technology, and as you all know, it's any form of a technology product or service which we use to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. And for us, we call it a tool that supports the right to life. As a company, we offer services of assessing and evaluating individuals, recommendations and implementations of equipment, and of course, education, support and training for our customers. Our philosophy is based on the fact that technology is for the service of people to provide quality in life, and of course, as much as independence is possible, according to each case. Our company vision is to find and provide the best assistive technology products and solutions that work in the markets that we operate. We operate in 3 markets, that is Cyprus, Greece, and Malta. And we supply all 3 markets with our products and solutions. A little bit about our company history. MK Prosopsis was founded in 2004. So we have been in the market for 18 years, and as I already mentioned, we have activities in Malta as well. In Malta, we actually started having activities since 2015. We mainly concentrate into 3 categories, and these categories are access, and by access we mean access to the environment or access to a computer or your mobile device. Communication for those who need assistance for communicating, and learning solutions. I will be very quick because we don't have a lot of time in our hands. So I start immediately by just showing in brief some solutions on how to access a computer. To access a computer, we usually need an input device, and that could be a mouse, a keyboard, or a switch. Pointing devices or alternative mice can be trackballs, joysticks, and ergonomic or vertical mouse. Most of the alternative mouse, you have the option to use a switch if you have difficulties in accessing the embedded control of each trackball and joystick. So you always you always have an option on attaching an external switch in order to simulate the mouse buttons. Other pointing devices that a disabled person can use is head control. So you just move the head and you can control the cursor of the mouse. Mouth control, and of course, as already Shaun mentioned several times, eye control solutions. Alternative ways of accessing your environment or your computer is switches. We have a lot of different type of switches, head switches, foot switches, finger, again, depending, as we already said, on the functional capabilities of a person. Of course, there's always a solution of touch, of direct access to a touchscreen that many of our customers can use. So if you have the ability to control the hand or just a finger, then there are several options that we can provide for controlling your communication device or just having access to your computer. Also, keyboards are necessary input devices for using a computer. So we offer different type of keyboards, mainly keyboards with larger keys, color-coded or touch keyboards, and also keyboards for people who use just the left or the right hand to access the computer. Very important in the assistive technology is mounting solutions. So mounting solutions assist us to place a device, either a switch, communication device, a keyboard, to the appropriate height and angle in order to make it easier and more accessible to the person. So the target here is to be able to control the computer or your communication device with the minimum effort. Also important to mention tables, and when we say the category of tables, we mean usually tables who are height adjustable, so different sizes and different angles, again to accommodate a person in a wheelchair or a person that needs a different angle in order to access either their reading device or just their computer, or just to have it at school or even to a kindergarten. Of course, under the access category, we have the Grid, which offers through the accessible apps Grid set access to either other software that you might have installed on your computer or other applications that are useful to control. Of course, we have solutions for people with sensory issues, hearing impairment or low vision or blind, and some of them are magnifiers. So all these are either desktop or portable magnifiers that accommodate either students, professionals, or elderly at home. And of course, we have the software-based magnifier, which is for people who just need the use of the computer and might use a magnification in order to be able to use their computer. And of course, Braille solutions for blind people. That would be embossers, printing Braille on a piece of paper, or just connecting your Braille line to your computer in order to read the emails, documents, or even write. And we offer, of course, hearing solutions for people with hearing impairment. Again, solutions for students at school in order to enhance the speech from the teacher, the professor, or daily aids like television aids or amplified telephones, or even alarms, clocks, and vibrators in order to use it at home. And of course, as we already mentioned, access does not mean only access to the computer or to the communication device, but also access to space or environment. So through the Grid again, and of course through different adaptations, a person can control the whole environment of their house with the use of technology. And quickly we move on from access solution to communication solutions. So as Shaun already mentioned, AAC means augmentative and alternative communication, and there are of course a lot of terms to use for what AAC is, and here we just mentioned that it's anything else besides talking. So AAC includes all forms of communications that we use to express our needs, our thoughts, wants, and ideas. Even facial expressions or gestures, or by just looking, it can be considered as an AAC. We divide or we categorize AAC into three categories. One is no-tech, low-tech, and high-tech. No-tech technology can be printed books and images or simple communication board with printed images or just the alphabet. Low-tech solutions are simple buttons or tables which we record the speech therapist voice or the parent voice, and sometimes we even have an image in order for the person to be able to make a choice if you have more than just a single message recorder. Also, under low-tech category, you can have communication devices which you can change the face of the device, and you can have from 2 to 4 to 8 messages. And also you have devices that have levels. That means that you can change different pages in a communication device and have different communication pages either for a particular user or for several users. And the third category under AAC is high-tech systems, which usually they use a synthesized voice. So as already showed several times, there are communication solutions that can be used by touch, head control, or eye control, depending on the functional capabilities of each person. Communication can be achieved either by using symbols, if the person is not able to read and write yet, or you can use an on-screen keyboard or pre-saved text messages in order to communicate. We also offer several different software for speech therapists that they can use to increase speech or analyze speech of their customers. We also offer simple educational software for different topics. And also we have a range of educational cards that can be used by speech therapists or special education teachers. And we also offer sensory development solutions, building sensory rooms, etc. So that is all for me. That was a quick presentation because we are running out of time. So if you need to have some more information about us, you can either check in our website or our Facebook page, which is always including the news, offers, and any new products that we might have. So thank you all for watching today, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us in the chat or just send us an email later on.
Thank you, Shaun, Daisy, and Theo for the great presentations. I'd like to remind everyone that they can send questions in the Q&A box. We do have a question. I think this is for Shaun or for Daisy. It says, besides Word and apps you mentioned, are there any apps that can be downloaded, like educational games and apps for quizzes?
I'm happy to just jump in with an answer there. So as well as the grid sets that we looked at, Shaun mentioned something called interactive learning, which is a really nice set of I think 25 different activities that you can download into either Grid 3 or Grid for iPad. So you could have a look at those if you wanted to get the free trial. And those activities are all designed to develop your access and be a really nice way into AAC because they're fun and they're motivating and they start at a really cause and effect level and build up to sort of more making choices and challenges. So yeah, those activities can be really nice. I don't know, anything else to add to that, Shaun?
Not from me, no, I don't think so. I think that's what I would have said.
Thank you, Daisy. We also have a question. The Gridpad 10 seems perfect for children with autism. I believe it could be recommended at ACTU. We do actually make recommendations depending on assessment outcomes. I'd like to know if there is a way to limit access to social media or YouTube.
Yep, so we're sitting next to each other for a bit. So there we go. So the short answer is yes. Particularly within the grids on the Windows device, it's much easier to decide what you give your users access to and what you don't. You don't have to have the YouTube element on there, so if it's not there, it can't be used anyway, and then you could add it at a later date if it was appropriate. But yeah,
as we saw as well in when we were looking at one of
that goes on and basically lock a user into the grid software to the point where we can hide the menu, so that you would have to physically plug a keyboard into the device to be able to unlock it. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything new when I say that there's lots of kids that are very well versed in getting into things in menus that they're not supposed to get into, or you don't want them to get into. So yeah, but yeah, the short answer is yes, it's possible to do that. Okay.
Another question was the activities that Daisy mentioned, can they be found on your website?
Yeah.
Okay, Shaun has confirmed, yes, they can be found on the website. Are there any more questions? Let's see. I can see there's a question from Rachel asking about school visits. If you could send us an email, we could get back to you better with an answer for that question. If there are no more questions, I think we can end the event here. I don't know if Theo or Shaun would like to add anything.
Just thank you very much for your time. Thank you for attending, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Goodbye.